So.
No, man.
Okay, we're talking about man purses here. So these man purses enter the car with these individuals, and later they're not found in the car at the murder scene or anywhere near the murder scene. Hello, my friends. It's your second or third favorite attorney. Once again, this is Attorney Session. Today, I will be reacting to a video entitled 6 Bombshells Dropped by Lead Detective in YNW Melly's Double Murder Case. Remember, as always, please like and subscribe to our content. Please like and subscribe to our page. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. Firstly, this video in particular goes through the evidence that the prosecution has against YNW Melly that kind of places him at the scene of the crime and causes the jury to connect the dots in implicating him for the murder of his 2 friends. So I'll be discussing the video in terms of the evidence admitted, how it's authenticated, things of that nature. So yeah, let's just tune in and see what happens.
How you feel out here?
Jurors hear from YNW Melly and the 2 friends he's accused of killing.
We were talking about that jump back in the day. They like,
Swipe on, they want to chill.
crazy. Rapper, that's what they need. They go get a job.
They also see a video of Melly and Bortland hours after the homicides having a good time. These are just some of the major moments from the testimony of the lead detective in Melly's double murder trial.
Remember that in a criminal case, the burden of proof standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. What this means is that the prosecution must convince the jury that there is no other reasonable explanation that can come from the evidence presented at trial. In other words, the jury must be virtually certain of the defendant's guilt before they render a guilty verdict.
Welcome to Law&Crime Sidebar Podcast. I'm Anjanette Levy. Detective Mark Moretti is the state's final witness in YNW Melly's murder trial. He spent hours testifying about things that he found as he investigated the murders of Chris Thomas Jr., who went by YNW Juvie, and Anthony Williams, who went by YNW Sack Chaser.
Okay, here the investigator comes in as an expert witness. The officer or investigator questioned in the courtroom as an expert witness must provide opinions and fact-based details about the case. He or she has to refrain from speaking on matters of guilt or innocence. If they do, their testimony can be stricken from the record.
Some of the testimony focused on money, text messages, and arguments between YNW members, particularly Sack and Melly. Melly's mom, Jamie King, is also mentioned in these arguments. Sack was none too happy with her in the months before the homicides. Joining me to discuss some of the big moments so far from Detective Mark Moretti's testimony is Bobby Chacon. He's a retired FBI agent who investigated gangs and the mafia. He's also an attorney, so he knows a lot about criminal cases. Bobby?
That guy has a lot of titles. Got about more titles than me, and that's kind of hard to do. I'm joking. I'm just BSing. But they did mention some of the evidence that's used in this trial. Talking about evidence and how it actually gets admitted into a case as evidence. In particular, for any piece of video evidence, any photograph, text evidence, these things must be authenticated for them to be admitted into evidence. All this means is that the party offering the evidence must present evidence that will support a finding that the evidence that they're admitting is what it purports to be. For example, let's take a handwriting. To authenticate a handwriting, you can use 1, a lay witness familiar with the handwriting before litigation begins, or 2, an expert witness like we have in this case who may be using documents to compare the handwriting to another piece of handwriting, or the trier of fact, which is the jury or the judge in a bench trial. They can actually authenticate the handwriting as well. For a photograph in particular, anyone who has personal knowledge of the scene in the photograph or anything anything like that can authenticate the photograph. Now, as it relates to this case, they're going to go through a lot of text message evidence and read a lot of text messages later on. And text messages can be authenticated through witness testimony or by circumstantial evidence like the author's screen name or monikers or customary uses of emojis and emotions or the author's known phone number, things like that. So all those little special emojis that you use all the time, all those little screen names, those things can be used to authenticate your text messages should the need ever come for them to be admitted in the court as evidence against you.
Bobby, welcome back to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
One of the things, Bobby, that was interesting to me is the fact that Detective Moretti was asked about so-called satchel man purses that both Bortland and YNW Melly were carrying when they left the recording studio that night before the homicides were committed. And Detective Moretti was asked about these man purse / satchels. So let's listen.
Were any man purses, satchels found in that regime?
No, ma'am.
Specifically, the beige one that's pictured at 2/18/40.
No, ma'am, we did not recover that.
Continuing forward to 2/19/05, was a black satchel recovered.
No, ma'am.
Specifically, the one that is seen in the individual in the black and white jacket.
Correct.
Did Mr. Henry have possession of either of those satchels or man purses at the hospital?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we're talking about man purses here. So these man purses enter the car with these individuals and later they're not found in the car at the murder scene or anywhere near the murder scene. So this is just one piece of the puzzle that the prosecution is using to close the gap of alternative explanations that the defense may have or try and use to overcome reasonable doubt.
Okay, Bobby, so the big point here is the fact that they leave the studio with man purses. And then Bortland arrives at the hospital in a frenzy with his two dead friends in the car. They seize the car, no man purses. How significant do you see that?
Well, I mean, in a case like this, where the allegation is that he carried out the murder with guns can fit into those satchels very well, and then they're gone, and then the guns are gone, and we can't find the guns, right? So this is a very this is a way of the prosecution explaining where the guns were, what happened to them. Clearly, Melly's not there. Bortland arrives. It's worse for Bortland because he has it in his possession. You can see it physically on the tape. And then, if his story is to be believed, he gets in that vehicle with the two victims, and then they're shot, and then he goes to the hospital. So there's no intervening stop that he makes. There's no intervening thing that would remove that satchel from him.
Like you said, there were no weapons found at the scene, so you have to paint a picture of what may have happened to the weapons, and that's exactly what the prosecution is attempting to do with this video evidence and this testimony from this expert investigator.
Melly, we don't see at the hospital, so we don't know where and when his story alters from that, but Bortland's his story is, I got into the car, we were driving, this drive-by happens, and then I go to the hospital. So that satchel that you see him with in that video should be on him or in that car. And so, that's where it gets interesting. And clearly the implication by the prosecution is, when Melly got out of the car and left, he took both men with him. I assume that's what they're going to allege in their closing arguments.
Guys, understand that in America in 2023, there's cameras everywhere. Everywhere, there's cameras. If you plan on committing a crime, and I hope to God that you're not planning on committing a crime, don't use this video as to say, hey, Attorney Session told me how to commit a crime. No, it ain't what the hell I'm telling you to do. But if you plan on committing a crime, which, again, I hope you won't, and I hope you're not, understand that there's always cameras around, and there's more than likely some eyes looking at you.
The next point that was interesting was the fact that, we have these cell phones these days that track everything we do, our steps, everything. And Detective Moretti said he analyzed the cell phone records and he looked at where Melly's cell phone which is in dispute. The defense says it was almost like passed around and used by everybody, but the state says no way, it was Melly's phone.
Okay, we see here the investigator or who they're using as an expert witness trying to authenticate the cell phone and its location information. And he's doing this by testifying to information and data he's analyzed. This is a large part of what an expert actually does. An expert bases their opinion on personal knowledge, facts on the record made known to the expert by a hypothetical or testimony at trial. They can also base it on facts not in the record, if they're the kind of facts that other experts would rely on, like the data he's analyzing to come to the conclusion of authenticating the location information for the cell phone.
He says he looks at that, the longitude and the latitude, and it puts Melly's phone right at the crime scene. Take a listen.
So Detective Moretti, I want to go here to publishing states 90. Once you have your bearings on this point from the 9807 phone, I'm going to switch over to the other side, at 4:03 a.m. What area does this depict?
This is the actual crime scene on US 27 and Pembroke Road.
And approximately where along Pembroke Road on this map were those casings discovered?
It was on the south side of the road, about 820 meters from US 27. I'm sorry, 820 feet from US 27, and obviously where the GPS coordinated that.
So Detective Moretti is saying that Melly's cell phone was essentially at the crime scene, that intersection of Pembroke Road and US 27 at 4:03 a.m. That's, 30 minutes before Portland arrives at the hospital. So
again, we see here how the prosecution, without weapons, without actually having Melly at the scene, they're using circumstantial evidence to help the jury connect the dots for these items. The dots that will place murder weapons at the scene, even though they don't have a weapon. They're just painting this picture for the jury.
So how significant is that?
Well, it's very significant, and this is how you see a prosecution building a case. So we saw testimony earlier in the trial that Melly was taking selfies with this phone and doing FaceTimes with this phone and using this phone actively. And like you said, he's trying to allege this was kind of a community phone and passed around. But the prosecution has already put in evidence, testimony that, that ties him pretty directly to this phone. This is his phone. You tie that with the fact that it's 4:03 a.m. in the morning. How many people are up there, and how many people in this so-called community that's using this phone is up at 4:03 a.m. in this rural area where you look at that aerial photograph, there's not a whole lot of other things around. This is not a convenience store where a bunch of people hanging out or anything. So, this phone in that rural area that they've already established through previous testimony he uses and is pretty much his sole exclusive phone. You can see how they're building through different testimony of different witnesses.
Although this attorney's assessment is correct in terms of the evidence being presented, remember that all the defense has to do is create a reasonable amount of doubt that Melly was not at the scene, that he could have been somewhere else, that the defense doesn't have enough evidence to place him at the scene. And at that point, the prosecution has not met their burden.
Their narrative and their storyline, and this is another damning piece. If it's giving credibility, which it should be, this is something.
If it's given credibility, that was the point I was making.
Scientific evidence, pieces that tell the story of where Melly was that evening.
The defense is basically disputing a lot of this and saying that Detective Moretti isn't even an expert in this and he shouldn't even be introducing this evidence. So it'll be interesting to see what the defense does on cross with this and when they call their own experts.
This is an age-old tactic of impeaching a witness's testimony. You attack the reliability of a witness by attacking their credentials, their qualifications, things of that nature. Maybe some statements that they made in the past that are inconsistent to the statements they're making now. These are ways you impeach a witness. You attack a witness's credibility. We don't see that in this video, but that's what the defense attempted to do on cross-examination of this expert witness.
One thing the defense has also said in this case is, Melly, Juvie, Sack, they were all best friends.
Melly, Juvie, and Sack. We recycling names now because the Juvie I grew up listening to was from the Hot Boys. We talking about Juvie. You dig? Hey, get your soldier rags. Hey, partner. That's the Juvie. Okay, never mind. Y'all know I'm good at rabbit trailing. Just bear with me here.
Real quick, I just wanted to say that Attorney Tom / Attorney Reacts content is now on Spotify. We just launched a partnered show. Link in the description. Go check it out. Now, back to the video.
Since growing up in a kind of a really bad neighborhood in Florida, and, you know, there was some friction, it looks like, between Sack and Melly leading up to these homicides. And really, Sack was upset about what he thought was Melly getting all of the credit for their success. So let's take a listen.
Oh yeah, and I meant to tell you all, I told you before, do the same shit I be doing. I'm just under you because I let you be the face, but I'm the CEO.
I can't even tell you what the hell any of that meant. I honestly don't know.
So Sack is saying, look, you know, you're getting all the credit.
That's what he's saying?
The one who's behind this, you know, I'm the boss. So there's obviously some friction, despite what the defense claimed in its opening, that these are his best friends, you know, there was nothing going on here.
Well, you know, both things can be true at the same time. That's the issue. My issue with the defense's argument is like, they could be best friends. I could believe that they grew up as best friends and still were. But man, when money comes between friends and it becomes big money and it's a music career and not only money, but it's notoriety and it's publicity and fame, all of that really drives people's dark side of their personalities. And that's what you're seeing in some of this. You see the resentment. I buy the fact that they were childhood friends and they grew up very close friends together and still were. Women, fame, and money are always the things that kind of come between good friends. And here you have the fame and the money aspects of it. And I think that's kind of corroborated in these texts.
And the best friend argument is a weak argument in and of itself, in my opinion. Let's imagine, and hear me out here, hear me out. Let's imagine OJ would have said, there's no possible way in hell I killed Nicole or her lover because I'm her husband and I love her. How many of us are buying that? Okay, you don't have to leave your responses in the comments, unless, of course, you want to. I would love you to. Hell, you know how I am. Leave those damn comments.
And there's a lot of discussion about money in a lot of these text messages that we haven't put up because this is very tedious as the detective reads through all of it. But there's a lot of talk about money and Melly needing to get money from Track, his manager. He needs to get a new card. Money seems to be a big factor in this case. We're going to look now at some texts between Sack and Melly, where they talk about Melly's mom, Jamie King. And it sounds like Sack felt like Jamie King was trying to break up YNW Melly, to break them up and have Melly kind of be the star, even though he was the front man. So let's look at these texts.
I'm good. It's just somebody telling me, y'all, how you let this shit keep going this far. What if it was the other way around?
How he's reading these messages, man. Not to take away from the seriousness of this case, but it's pure comedy. You can tell he's trying not to F up.
My mom wouldn't be doing no shit like this.
Next message at 12:40 p.m. from the 9081.
I'm bullying and say I was beefing with you before. Shit like that stuck with my blood.
The response from the 9807 phone number on 12/40/41/8/30/2018.
You hear how she refers to the text message being from the 9807 phone number instead of Melly's phone number, for instance. She's pretty much just reminding the trier of fact, which is the jury, of her narrative that these messages and these words are actually from the individual that she's trying to say they're from.
I don't consider her my mama. No motherfuck that bitch, bro. I know, I feel, yeah, that shit weird, bro.
August 30th, 2018, from the 9081 phone number at 12:41:30.
Then she keep telling people shit about me, and I'm not even worried about her, bro. The case without you be on some crazy shit.
And the response on August 30th, 2018, 12:41 p.m. from the 9807.
Like, I don't even be knowing what the fuck to say. If you all kill her, fuck it, bro. She ain't my mama. She's...
Okay, so I'm not the spokesperson for parental relations or anything like that, but it saddens me to hear somebody talk about their mother this way. even if you don't get along or have the best relationship with your mother. Like I say, I'm not the spokesperson for parental relationships, but yeah, this is just sad to hear.
She sold her soul.
So Sack is obviously upset with Jamie King.
Obviously.
Melly is saying basically his mom's awful and she sold her soul. It sounds like this is again about money. So
he also said, if you peel her, I don't care, something to that nature. Like you giving the okay for somebody to kill your mama? That's not a good piece of evidence for him.
But then, you know, the allegation is that Melly kills his friends. So what do you make of this?
Well, I think he's trying to smooth things over with his friend. I think that, you know, he's kind of trying to say, yeah, she's crazy, you're right. Like, I think he's kind of giving in to him a little bit, even if he doesn't believe that. I'm not saying he doesn't or he does. I don't know. It's possible he's using her as the scapegoat, right? Even though he's enjoying the fruits of her labors, basically. But he's going to take the face of it and say, look, I'm not with that. I'm not, you know, she's doing that on her own. I don't agree with it. This guy, his friend, is clearly upset. He's trying to, I think, talk him away from the ledge by agreeing with him and distancing, at least by words, distancing himself from his mom.
So I want you all to recognize what's going on here. Whenever you have a trial, especially one this highly profiled, you have one, the trial taking place in the actual courtroom, and you have two, the trial taking place in the court of public opinion. That's the media and everything else. So this trial actually ended in a mistrial, which means the jury was unable to come to a verdict based on the evidence presented. However, look at the way the media, the way these two individuals are talking, the way this attorney and former FBI investigator is talking about the evidence in the prosecution's case, almost as if he's confirming the dots that the prosecution is connecting that places Melly at the scene of the murder and the weapons that no one found at the scene of the murder. They're painting a narrative into Melly's guilt. You know, I'm not on this case. I'm not saying he's guilty or innocent. All I'm saying is that maybe, just maybe, the prosecution has not met their burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And it seems as if the jury in this case had mixed feelings about that as well.
And now there was a video that was played in court that basically shows Melly and Portland having a really good time, hours, literally hours after his friends are murdered. They're at a video shoot. So we'll take a quick look at that.
I have a real close friend of mine who played in the NBA. He passed away a few years back. His name was Alton Ford. We grew up together. He passed away. Me and my buddies, when we drank and we laughed all night just to celebrate his life because we knew that's what he would have wanted. But so, you know, I say that to say, again, you never know how someone grieves. So I don't think that this necessarily paints that picture that, oh, okay, they had just committed murder and they don't care because they're not sad because their friends died. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so Portland and Melly, I mean, Melly's dancing around 12 hours after his friends have been murdered, his best friends.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I you know, people respond to, you know, grief and death differently. So
Exactly.
You know, this is not a slam dunk for me. Like, oh my God, he's dancing around. He clearly is guilty. He's got no remorse, or he's got no, you know, grief for his friends. I think that if this was a planned video shoot, you know, and included the whole group, two of which are now dead, they probably should have canceled it or would have postponed it at least. So you do think it...
Or maybe they thought their boys would have wanted them to continue on with the video.
It is kind of odd a little bit. For me, it's not like an oh my God moment where look at him dancing around, you know, 12 hours after his friend died. You know, it's tough for me because especially in the early stages, it's different in different people, depending on how you were raised and your feelings for the other people. But certainly it does support some of the allegations, you know, in the prosecution's theory of the case that, you know, here they are now. They've eliminated two of the bands basically, so they could share, so that each of their shares are going to be bigger. And now they're doing a video shoot where it's just the two of them. And I don't even know if the video shoot was for that. I do think it's odd. I've been around enough people who just learned about the death of friends or loved ones to see a lot of different types of reactions.
The final one we're going to look at is something Detective Moretti said really piqued his interest on December 4th, 2018, when he saw a documentary published on Melly's YouTube page in which it says Melly and his friends were the targets of a drive-by. So Detective Moretti said basically the last 20 seconds of that piqued his interest. And I think it's because it basically says Melly and his friends were the targets of a drive-by, and Melly's saying he wasn't even in the car.
So again, I can't stress enough. I cannot stress enough as this video is winding down that everything you place on social media can later be used against you. This is something that Melly posted on his YouTube channel a while back, and now it's coming back and it's coming up in court as the subject of evidence that this expert witness is testifying to. So just be careful, like I said, of everything you place on social media and everything you put out there.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wonder if they trip themselves up about that because, obviously, look, we both know very enterprising defense attorneys will say that when he says they were victims, Melly didn't have to be in the car to be a victim, right? It was against 3 of his close friends, and the 4 of them were a group, so any attack on any one of them is attack on all of them. As a defense attorney, that's what I'd get up and say to kind of smooth over this mistake that they made. It seems like they stumbled over themselves here in saying that because I think he forgot that his allegation, or I wasn't anywhere near the car when it happened. Now he puts that on, So I think that's probably caused a little bit of a headache for his defense attorney. But I'm sure, he'll have some way of explaining that as, an attack on one of them is attack on all.
As Dave Chappelle always says, man, you got to give your attorney something to work with.
So even though Melly wasn't in that car, as, this is going to be the claim of the defense, even though Melly was in that car, he feels he was also a victim of that drive-by because his 2 good friends were killed. So, you can always explain that away, but it does look to me like they stumbled over themselves here and they forgot what their defense was going to be. They included that in this very self-serving documentary.
And, I think what's the important point, at least for the detective's testimony, he's saying, I saw that and it interested me. It got me kind of thinking about this. However, the defense could say, Melly's this big star. He doesn't put that stuff up on the screen. Somebody else typed that. That's not his.
Very
he
true.
didn't do that.
Very true. Right.
Well, Bobby Chacon, thank you so much for your time. As always, we appreciate it.
Perfect. And Jeanette, thanks for having me.
Like I said, this case has been pretty interesting, and the case, of course, ended in a mistrial. So they will retry the case, I think, within 90 days. So we at Attorney Reacts will definitely be reporting on the next case for you and giving you all that great information because, we always give you what you want. I think so. Do you guys really want this stuff? Don't respond to that. But thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe to my page. As always, we appreciate you guys. And until next time, take it easy, my friends.
Let's go.